Welcome back. This is Upfront. My name is Raymond Acquah. Now, as President Akufo-Addo calls for divine help to aid the country deal with the current state of the economy, the minority in Parliament is already up in arms, threatening to drag the finance minister and the governor of the Bank of Ghana to the House over the economy. This comes days after the Bank of Ghana had announced three measures to tackle the inflationary and currency difficulties the nation is having. Well, tonight we'll be exploring these measures and its efficacy with that distinguished economist and former board chairman of both GRA and NDPC, Professor Stephen Adair. Prof, you're welcome to Upfront. I hope you are doing well. Prof, you can hear me. You're welcome to Upfront. I hope you are doing well.
Yes, I am.
Great.
Thank you.
Now, it's good to hear from you, but it doesn't appear to be very wonderful times. Not long ago today, the President of the Republic had cause to call for divine help. He actually believes that government's not giving up, but God should help us. He said it in the church and at a religious program, to be fair. Does that reflect where we have come with the state of the economy?
I think that you wouldn't say that if you go to church and you pray that God should help us in the economy, then it means that you have given up humanly. I'm a strong believer in the sovereignty of God. So in addition to all our economic measures, praying is not something to be ridiculed. But the reality is that we are in difficult times. And yes, Ghanaians must pray, but there must be measures that will, at least in the near future, improve our situation.
Now, that's interesting. Now, already, there is a political twist to it. The Bank of Ghana yesterday called an emergency monetary policy committee. They basically raised the monetary policy rate by a significant 300 basis points, pushing it from 19 to 22%. They also raised the primary reserve requirement of banks from 12 to 15, which is to be implemented in a phased manner from now till November of this year. 13, 14, and 15. There's also something else that they did. They actually said they were boosting the supply of foreign exchange and strengthening the BoG's FX auctions by, if I'm quoting them, working collaboratively with the mining firms, international oil companies, and their bankers to purchase all foreign exchange arising from the voluntary repatriation of export proceeds from mining and oil and other gas companies. Let me start with the MPC's end. It might appear that this inflation targeting approach is the main major quiver or arrow in the quiver of the BoG. But is it far-reaching enough? And would it fix the problem?
First of all, the Bank of Ghana has only monetary policy by law. So there are many things outside their control. So that is the only one they can control. But I personally don't think that our current situation can be solved only by monetary policy measures, increasing the base rate, the lending rate, restricting expansionary move by the commercial banks, because what he's saying is that by increasing the base, the percentage of their monies held by the Bank of Ghana, by a multiplying effect, you are restricting the ability of the commercial banks to lend. But the trouble is that they are not lending anyway to the private sector. With treasury bills going for 30%, the real sector, the business people, are not getting any loans in the first. So therefore, you are just going to increase the drying up of finances to agriculture, to industry, to services, and everybody is withdrawing their money and going to buy treasury bills. So, in Kobesi, so that by itself cannot. Also, if certain fundamentals they are not addressed, if the Bank of Ghana continue just auctioning money for people to still buy because Christmas is coming, the demand of dollars, I have my doubt whether that approach is going to solve the problem. In other words, if you are managing an economy, monetary policy is only one element. You have the fiscal policies to be put in place. And also, a time comes where you have to take other measures, which unfortunately going to the IMF will not allow you to do, is you stop certain things. For example, during the 2008-2009 crisis in the Southeastern Asia, Malaysia was the first country to come out of the financial crisis because they decided to impose temporary foreign exchange restrictions. So there are other measures that must complement what the Bank of Ghana is doing, and so long as they want to rely on monetary policy, interest rate management, and the rest, I don't think that we will see the end. But I'm hoping that the fiscal response, that means the revenue and expenditure side, will also complement it. But it will maybe at the risk of short-term contraction of the economy. In other words, growth will be constrained, and therefore the growth targets will not be realized.
Now, it sounds interesting. You had just mentioned that monetary policy options are the only ones that the Bank of Ghana currently can deploy at this time. There was a proposal, and the BoG itself had said that they were collaborating with the mining firms, international oil companies, and bankers to purchase all foreign exchange arising from the voluntary repatriation of export proceedings from the mining, oil, and gas companies. This sounded like, it will require a lot of pressure and persuasion on the extractive industry players. But is this a necessary move if we really want to get to where we want to get to?
What I'm saying is that all the three measures will be one of the repertoires. I personally think that the raising of the base rates in the current situation, which is going to dry up, will not do. But the buying of the foreign exchange, the question is that, unfortunately, I'm not talking about the current government. Our government, successive governments, have done us in. Do you know that all the mining companies, the amount of real effective tax they pay is less than 5%. And they are allowed to keep almost all their money offshore. And you are talking about voluntary repatriation. In other words, if they would agree to come voluntary. I think that this is the time the government must be able to tell some of the players that, look, the country is in a crisis. Even if it requires emergency powers, we are not going to allow the status quo to continue. We are not going to allow the mining companies to be keeping all their foreign exchange overseas. We are not going to allow MTN every quarter to sweep billions overseas. This is a crisis time. I hope it will be temporary, but all the companies must be called to order. But this is where a chicken and an egg. The IMF and World Bank dogmatically insist on non-intervention other than using, monetary policies, reducing expenditure and increasing your revenue, which of course, the latter two being fiscal policies are necessary, but you can't do it overnight. You cannot tomorrow increase your revenue by, say, 50%. Neither can you cut expenditure beyond a certain limit. So I think that we must put our feet down, and I hope that the negotiation with the IMF will be quicker, and some resolutions made, because the longer it delays, the more speculation and the worse the economy will be in.
Now, today, the cedi was almost a dollar was exchanging for almost 10 cedi. The exchange rate situation has gotten so bad that the people are even up in arms. In fact, some members of parliament, including John Abdullah of both the Finance and the Mines and Energy Committee, is asking that they drag both the Finance Minister and also the Governor of the Bank of Ghana to Parliament, because they need to account the people how they are getting us out of the current situation. Do you think pressure from basically Parliament would help the BoG and the Finance Ministry put in what may be more resolute measures which would help us fix the problem we are in?
Very little, very little. In other words, it's a question of, if the parliamentarians have an answer, they are part of Ghana, they are our leaders, they have made suggestions. It's politically, of course, when it comes, you want them to come. But they are coming to tell you, we are going to the IMF, we are doing the measures we are putting in place and other things. I don't think that is the situation. What I would recommend is that, and unfortunately, I don't know, even for political outreach itself, the government should have been having an open dialogue with not just parliamentarians, but with identified groups as to this is the situation we are. For example, all the Gupta people are hoping to get foreign exchange to import things for Christmas, and that they are worried that it's getting expensive. The reality is this: we are not going back to how we got here. We cannot have a Christmas this year as we have had before. Prices are going to be about double. Imported things, that's the reality of things. And therefore, we should be sitting down and talking as Ghanaians in the light of this. What are the sacrifices that we have to make so that our time in Wonderland will be shorter rather than prolonged? And this, you cannot only do it as a government sitting there. There must be an open dialogue. And people must know that where we are, we have about 12 to 18 months of real challenge and contraction of the economy, having to reduce expenditure whilst trying to increase revenue and the rest. And these are hard ones, and we should be more open. And governments, of course, opposition would like to take advantage of it, and government will say, we will solve it. The reality is that there's going to be several months of extreme conditions of hardship before we will get out of the woods. And that is a reality once we get into this state of the economy.
But Prof, in the last 3 months, government has introduced several measures, including cutting back on expenditure. Government has also actually given us indication of what we're going to do. E-levy is picking up, as we've been told today, and some other revenue measures, especially at the ports and others, are also working. From where you sit, when you say that we should brace up for more difficult times, is it not opposing the very things government has laid out, which even the president said we're going to do more of, so that we are pushed out of the woods as soon as possible, or we bring some relief to the people? Is your prognosis not directly, diametrically opposed to what government has been telling everybody in this country?
No, I'm not. Listen, I'm not talking as a politician, both government or opposition. The reality is this. Yes, these measures are necessary, painful as they are, but you cannot, an economy is not like, growing Chinese vegetables overnight under special conditions, and you get the shoots, and the next morning you have it in your Chinese restaurant, bamboo shoots. No. What listen, how many months now have we gone through? It's now about 6 months from about February, March, is it? So
yeah.
about 5 months. Let me tell you that in the best of conditions, this economy will go through hard times for 6 to 12 months. It's a reality. But the more we support government to take the hard measures, the shorter will be our times in the doldrums. And of course, it's a question of timeline as to how long it will take. But I don't see, for example, even with an IMF program, and we need it, and if government gets even the 3 billion, for example, you are not going to get the cedi come down significantly. It can't in the short to medium term. So I am not saying that the measures are not true. I also believe that within 12 months, this economy will stabilize and we will revert back to a much more sane one. But it's not something anybody should be on the illusion that within 2 months things are going to be easy.
Is it? I mean, it's interesting. You actually said government to come out and speak to the people about these conditions. Who within government should lead this communication? Because it appears to be very urgent and important now. People are confused. The exchange rate is currently being exacerbated by many of the other things happening. And if you consider that we have had a recent increment in utility tariffs, worsening the inflation more likely in the future, whose responsibility should be to be in the position to manage the expectations of Ghanaians, which is things should get better soon?
When you are in such situations, there are 2 levels. First, there's the political level, and the buck stops with the president. Let me say that let's take one crisis we just went through, a very serious one, COVID-19. The president every week spoke to the nation. My guy is not good, but I used to tease, I call him Anyameme.
Okay.
And every Sunday at 8 o'clock, there was a statement by the president. Things are still not good. Please join us. Support. Be careful how you behave. And almost everybody, where you were, at 8 o'clock, you were glued to the radio, true or false?
Certainly.
I think that this is of the gargantuan level of COVID-19. So is the president. Then there is also, but that is, really a sort of communication that tells the people we are with the, for example, the IMF have come and gone. How many weeks? That's about 4 weeks. There has not been a statement which says we are in dialogue with the IMF, we are at a critical stage. I know things are hard, but these are the type of information, even if it is not specific, that gives confidence to the people. The second is at a technical level, and this is where when governments, and here I underline the S, governments undermine institutions like the National Development Planning Commission, they eventually sow the wind and reap the whirlwind when they politicize, put politicians there, because during the 2 years that I was chairman of National Development Planning Commission, every month we organized a national development forum where we continuously discuss national development issues. This is the time that this institution, like the NDPC, and ISA and the rest, should be charged to lead a continuous dialogue at the technical level. So you operate both at the political and at the technical level. But when people are left to be speculating, no discussions of no round table. At this stage, you can't sit down there and make Gupta make a statement today, next day it is AGI, next day it's National Chamber of Commerce and other things. No. So it is a development dialogue management. And I think that is not being done enough.
Suffice it to say that government is interested in managing the expectations of the people. There are some who have already started hinting that even some of the decisions currently happening must either be reversed or be halted. Examples have been cited. Just today, there was a press conference by a grouping under the umbrella Arise Ghana. They are insisting the recent tariff increases should be reversed. The only claim they make there is that it's going to worsen the current state of the Ghanaian and impoverish people further. Is this something that, to your mind, would bring some relief or improve the situation?
Unfortunately, some of these groups they are not technical groups, they are political surrogates. The question is this: you want to say that inflation has gone up by 30% and all these things, and then some electricity and water should not be increased because people will be hard. Now, who should subsidize it and where will the money come from? I think that the increase and the PURC, I dovetail my heart for them. They were very, very wise and judicious in their analysis. Of course, the people came for 300%, 146%. But since the last increase in tariffs, and even the tariff rates were reduced under COVID, it's true that things are not easy for Ghanaians, no, and especially those at the lower level. But if there were no increase and there's no way the system can be sustained. And in any case, they must make a choice between no electricity or tariff increase. It's easy to say, of course, everybody say, oh, if you increase price, people will find life difficult. But so let every price go down, but when it comes to electricity and water, maintain it. Who is going to pay the increased cost? Because these are not only domestic, they have also even foreign exchange input in order to keep the system going. So I don't think that the reality which we must face as a nation is this. And there has been diagnosis of the cause. We have come to a point whereby we need, unfortunately, to already tighten belt. And there's no alternative to it. If there were, the rice people would have come up with it.
Now, that's also another interesting dynamic to all of this. How about transport fares? Transportation is perhaps one of the major contributors to our inflation. There's been a suggestion that if we really want to tackle inflation properly, deal with transportation. Proposals are being to the point that now that it appears the international crude oil prices are actually coming down, one of the things you should do is reducing the taxes or the margins that are already on the pricing formula. Is this something you would support?
The question is this. I mean, if you look at it holistically, already with all the taxes, whatever you talk about it, government revenue is far short of what is needed. And now you are saying that basically government should reduce revenue, basically. I mean, do you see the inconsistency?
I get you.
There's a financing gap. One of the problems we are having is a big financing gap between expenditure and revenue. And that revenue includes all the taxes you are talking about. And then you go and say that reduce the revenue and In fact, people are looking for subsidy for electricity and for light. I mean, in terms of economics, we used to be called dismal economy, because it makes you almost like you are callous.
Okay.
But that is the fact that if you have, say, an ulcerated leg or a cancerous finger, it may still have to be, yes, you look beautiful, but your finger may have to be cut for you to save your life. At this moment, this is not the time anyone can be talking about revenue reduction. Rather, what I'm hoping for is that there will be revenue increase, but not at the rate of taxation, increasing the tax rate, but expanding the tax net, so that you cannot continue to tax the workers on their meager salaries and let people in Trasaco pay peanut for rates when they are living in multi-million-dollar houses. So it is a question of, but the revenue must be increased, not decreased. And therefore, this is not the time for anybody to be talking about reducing revenue.
Now, let me ask you this question about what's actually the alternatives on the table today. Do you feel, have we heard enough by way of fiscal policies to complement the monetary policies that the Bank of Ghana put out there? From where you sit, have we put our best foot forward when it comes to fiscal policies?
Very difficult, because it seems a lot is now being cooked with the IMF, so we must wait for the outcome. Mm-hmm. But I think that some measures, for the first time in umpteen years, the media review, the Minister for Finance did not ask for any more money to spend, and that he's going to manage with what they have. It's quite one of a major one. Definitely, a lot of expenditure I hear is being reduced. Unfortunately, some of them in the form of arrears, which is no reduction. Actually, it's a matter of postponing. If you reduce your expenditure by accumulating arrears, you don't achieve much, because it's going to hit you in the face as you go along. But so there is also some, I must confess, and this one not siding with the opposition, I think the fiscal side, there's some opaqueness, which I hope, because of the IMF, maybe that's why they are not talking. They have to do a little bit more open discussion on where we are going to cut, which of government programs we cannot, under these circumstances, continue. We have to suspend for about a year. Those things are not coming. It seems, almost every government program is important. But the question is, so I don't think that they have, as a government, they have come with the type of decisions which are required at this time. And ministers cannot go back and talking as if, we are in the same business as usual. For example,
you're making the point, Prof.
For example, my good old friend Akwata, wonderful minister, doing a lot of things. But the question is, at this stage, which are the priority roles and which cannot be made? Again, it has been said about free SHS. Excellent one, because, we cannot continue to leave children out. But can we continue to have free education with boarding, more or less shifting the meals of parents to government at all levels? So these are, but to say that, all the programs are sacrosanct, whilst at this moment you don't have the wherewithal. So I think that there is a much more hard review of things that needs to be done than is being done at the moment.
You mentioned You mentioned one of the untouchables, that is free right? SHS. It is untouchable because even a review of it is not something government is considering. The very proposal you are putting forward is exactly what? The government should scrap the boarding part or ask parents to pay for that part?
I think that already there's discrimination in it, in the sense that if two children go to school, and now in the school about half of the students are boarders, half are day students. So why should some Ghanaians have a free boarding, 3 meals, accommodation, everything else, and the other Ghanaian children have to transport themselves to the school and at best have only one lunch? Equalization. Everybody, teachers are paid, the parents don't have to pay for the teachers, the books. But then, why should somebody who just by luck gets into boarding house have it for free, and the same child who goes for day has to transport himself? And so there is room for calibration. I am 100% support of free education, but it must be in such a way that we can afford it. It's as simple as that.
And to where you sit, beyond, okay, of course, you are proposing a boarding review, but to make it a bit more egalitarian, what should be done?
You know, one of the things the private sector in the education have been saying, why should a child who goes to a private school, and I'm not talking about the elite private school, GIS, Ghana Christian, SOS, or no, but at this moment, when you go to the villages, and especially in Ashanti and Braham, the private, we call them poor private schools, are doing some tremendous work training about 20% of children. Now the question is, they treat them as if when they go to the private school, which means that they are relieving the government, as if they are in the cancerous educational system. I think that what we should do is this. If the unit cost of a day student, just for the sake of the argument, is 1,000 cedis, that's what the government is subsidizing the day student. The same will be the subsidy for you when you go to the boarding house. The rest you pay. That is equity.
Sorry, I seem to have lost you, Prof. Okay.
Let me come over again.
Yes, because I had difficulty hearing you, sir. Yeah.
Okay, is it better now?
Powerful.
Take 2 children going to Achimota Secondary School. One is a day student, one is a boarding student. If the government spends 1,000 cedis on the day student, and for sake of argument, 2,000 cedis on the boarding student, I think that the boarder should pay the extra 1,000 for equity.
Okay, so boarding students should be made to pay some amount so that everybody's given the same amount.
Yes.
Would that not?
Because at this moment, it is free, but not equitably free. Those in the boarding the government spends more on the student in the boarding school than the same Ghanaian child who is in the day school in the same school. So, and this is one area. There are many more, but so a review should not be contrary to the government avowed principle, which I share, of making education accessible to every Ghanaian child. But we must look at it. In any case, there's no advanced country even in the world which trains its children in boarding schools. And yet it's a colonial heritage, and we are keeping it. And we think that we can, and even some people are saying that the university education must be free. They think that there's a Father Christmas from North Pole coming to pay the school fees.
But would this not offend the sanctity of telling students that you are going to school for free? If they are asked as boarding students to contribute to how much they are supposed to be, contribute to the payment of their fees, regardless of the fact that they are in boarding houses, would it not offend their thinking?
The question is, what about the day student? Is he not also a Ghanaian? Is the day student giving free education or not?
They are also, yes. Yeah, they are, yeah.
Yes, so therefore, why should the government be feeding you for dinner when the other one has to go home and eat dinner and breakfast?
The argument, again, is that the entirety of our flagship programs, free SHS and the rest, are just about some 15 billion cedis, according to the vice president. And that we spent more in other areas than that. So why can't we raise money to just keep those key policies in place, even in difficult times?
I have no problem at all. But the question is this: if they are spending more money in other places and they can cut at this moment, they are the government. The government is responsible to tell us how they are going to close the fiscal deficit and not borrowing at 30%. This is the only country, or I don't know of any other, whereby normally when government rates are lower than when a private sector borrows. But now in Ghana, the government borrows money at 30%. And that's not sustainable. It can only be for a short term. We have to resolve it very quickly, or else this economy will be, and has been for too long, whereby treasury bills are paying higher than the private sector when you go and borrow money from the private sector. That cannot continue.
There's something the president said when he spoke recently, that the Akufo-Addo government has thrown its hands in the air in despair at this development, that his government is determined to bring relief to the Ghanaian people and return the economy back to the high rates of growth that characterized the management of our economy in the 3 years preceding the COVID outbreak. That's what the president said. In fact, he also said every policy initiative, be it free SHS, the planting for food and jobs, one district, one factory, has been implemented with the well-being of the Ghanaian at heart. Would a review not offend this thinking?
I have no doubt that all the policies you are mentioning were done with the Ghanaian well-being at heart. But when you come to a point whereby you don't have the means to sustain them, you have no other option than two things: simultaneously reduce expenditure and increase revenue. That is what the government should be telling how that's going to be done to close the fiscal deficit. So it's not a question of not wanting you think that if I don't know whether your child is, you are too young, your child is not a university going age.
Yeah.
You might have liked your child maybe to go to Harvard University. But Charlie, you are going to pay $80,000 per year. So you may look for another alternative. So it's not a question that, who will stand against free SHS? Who will stand against planting for food? Who will stand against one district, one factory? They are necessary. But the question is, are we able to sustain it? Who would not like to see every road paved? Do we have the resources? We have to select which will be the priority roads in terms of time, not that, and then do them. I believe that at a certain point you have to prioritize. So it's a question of prioritization, not that they are not good enough. I personally think that if we put in the right measures within about 12 months, this economy will stabilize. And we can start a growth trajectory. But at this moment, stabilization is paramount, because without that, you wouldn't have the wherewithal to sustain growth. And the only, I believe that we have been here before, I'm 74 years almost, and Ghana, we have had inflation of 45%, interest rate of 50%, but we managed it. So we have gone there, but it's a hard landing. That's all that I'm saying.
Except that, now we are in junk status by international rating. All of these are compounding the fears of the people about the future of this economy. The president said something about the battle being the Lord's, even though government is doing a lot to bring relief to the people. Now, when you put all this together, there are also some, like that particular broadcaster, Kwesi Dakwa, that believe that the people at the helm of affairs are not doing enough, even by their own decisions, to help the economy. He's recently quoted to have said, in terms of our debt management and practices, that as Ghana gets poorer, the Minister of Finance's company or former company gets richer. And that to him, we will continue to be broke until we can get out of the thinking that we always need to borrow money, and that the borrowing is part of the plans of this country consistently.
We must be very careful looking for scapegoats when the things are hard. Data Bank has been part of the advices of all governments. Do you hear me? All governments, so long as I remember, at least for the past 22 years. I say 22 years because I was with the United Nations until the year 2000. So I wasn't following the details before then. Every international borrowing, because they had the expertise, whether it was NDC, it was Kufuor, or now. So we must be very careful. I don't believe that the borrowings were because Data Bank had to profit in the advisory. And they did it for NDC, they did it for Kufuor, and their level of expertise in this nation, very few, if any, can compare with them. Two, and this one, probably I shouldn't be saying it in public, but for what people are saying, 4 years, was it 4 years or 3 to 4 years before Ken Ofori-Atta joined politics, he resigned from management, board, anything associated with Data Bank. Of course, he being a founder, he has shares in it. So he has nothing to do. So I know that for sure. So, and in any case, I don't think what that would have been the motivation. What I think they got it wrong, and that is my own individual one, is that when Ghana's international rating was high, they believed that by going to the international market, they can accelerate the development of the nation. I think that they were caught by two things in terms of the managers. The first is that there's a limit to which you can fast track development. It has to be a bit systematic. And the second is that they were unfortunate to have been hit by COVID and external circumstances, by the Ukrainian war and the rest. And this coupled with led them into a crisis situation for which, and of course, what it meant was that you have elevated the expenditure level, and whenever there is, and they had a belief that they could get more revenue as a result, which didn't materialize. And these are the things that have come together. I don't believe that it was to profit Data Bank. This is just simplistic type of analysis. And they should go back and analyze and see what Databank Group has done in terms of supporting government after government in accessing the international capital market.
In effect, you mean it's not true that as the nation gets poorer through borrowing, the finance minister's company or ex-company actually gets richer?
First of all, there's a fallacy in what you have said. As the nation gets poorer through borrowing, the borrowing was meant, and I believe that it was meant to accelerate the nation's development. It's like saying that, you went and bought a car for commercial purposes, and then the car had an accident, and therefore the reason why the car had an accident was because you had a share in an insurance company which insured it to benefit from it. There's a fundamental fallacy that the borrowing was meant to make Ghana poorer. And once you are syllogism in logic, it's wrong. Everything you build on it is wrong.
So now,
but this is not economics. This is it's my opinion. So.
Yes, I get that. You do not think that the finance minister or his company and Databank being financial transaction advisors for government, there's anything wrong with that? You don't think so?
The question is this: being financial advisors, and there will be always a consortium, not them alone. Did it cost Ghana more than otherwise? This is a fundamental question. I doubt whether it did.
Is that question more important than the question that KKD asked? He says, is the Minister of Finance to date, whether or not should be benefiting from every time our country goes to borrow money? That's the question. He says, even Parliament failed because he sees that to be not right.
I heard him speak on the radios talking about, using some unpalatable, unpublic language which will not be used in public. That aside, I think that whenever a country like Ghana is going to the international financial market, they will require these advisors are part and parcel of it. I personally wish that it was other companies other than Databank. What I am saying is this: to say that the minister went to borrow so that Databank will benefit from it, I think is below the belt.
Prof.
It's just below the belt.
Prof, I'm grateful for your time this evening. And as usual, I'm grateful for your elucidation on these matters. Many thanks to you for joining.
Welcome.
I need to hear from the minority in Parliament. The Member of Parliament, who is also ranking on Mines and Energy and also member of the Finance Committee, has been demanding that the Finance Minister and the Governor of Bank of Ghana should be dragged to Parliament. John Abdullah Jalapo, you're welcome to Upfront.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We know we are in crisis, but exactly what will dragging the two before Parliament do to resolve the problem?
Thank you. First of all, I think that it's obvious that this problem is a problem that is of concern to all of us. This shouldn't be a problem left to the finance minister alone. And I think that if we're going to find solutions, all of us must understand the enormity of the situation, the root cause of the problem, and how collectively, and I mean collectively, we can find solutions to this problem. Look, whether we like it or not, Raymond, we would have to make some sacrifices. In order to make those sacrifices, we must build consensus. And that's why I think that, like most advanced and democratic countries will do, in the United States, Congress would have invited the Secretary of State the person responsible for finance here in the United States. In London or Britain, the exchequer would have been invited as well. And so I think that Parliament being an arm of government, Parliament that ensures that we have oversight responsibility over the executive, the time has come for us to invite both the governor and the finance minister, because the governor is responsible for monetary policy. The finance minister is largely responsible for fiscal policy. So we must have an appreciation of the two and see how collectively we can take some decisions going forward as far as tackling these major challenges concerned, because we are heading for doom. If you look at where inflation is skyrocketing, if you look at the exchange rate, look at our rating, look at almost every macro indicator is going into the negative, and it's getting worse by the day. So I think that as the people's representative, you, the people, cannot invite the finance minister. You have voted us, we represent you. And so it is time that we invite the two, appreciate the issues, and even more importantly, the way we are financing our deficit. If you read the monetary policy, the governor talks about a so-called advancing of monies to the finance minister. It's obvious that the finance minister cannot pay those monies. And the figure some of us are hearing is that we are looking at about 30 billion. If 30 billion is being advanced to the finance minister to cushion the system, what it means is that we are going beyond the 5% threshold in terms of previous year's revenue. So clearly, I think that, look, it is time for us to open up. It is time for us to fully appreciate the enormity of the challenge, and then collectively, we can all formulate policies and programs so as to tackle the situation.
I'm grateful to you for joining us, and that's the Member of Parliament demanding that the two are brought to Parliament. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining us on today's edition of Upfront, and thank you so much too, folks, for being part of this show today. Let's see you next week, Wednesday.